Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Alisha Brasher here at Cosmic Gateway. This is another episode of the Cosmic Gateway Roundtable, and I'm joined by my beautiful soul sisters for this panel. I'm very excited for this episode. It's been one in the making, and I want to thank Kaija for bringing this topic up. So starting off, we've got Kaija from Heart to Heart. We've got Joe from Awakening to the Light Within. We have Ana from Vitraya. Got it. And we've got Jen from Infused with Light. So welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here. So this topic, actually, before we get into the topic, I just wanted to put out to you all who are watching, and thank you so much for being here and your subscribes and tuning in to these episodes. I wanted to put it out to you guys as to what would you like discussed on upcoming episodes. So we started this project originally with a list of about 8 or 9 different topics, and as we're recording, coming towards the end of those, and I would really love more inclusion from you guys as to what you would like discussed and what you'd like to hear about. So if you'd like to so kindly put anything that sort of comes to mind in the comment section, that would be absolutely amazing, and very, very appreciative of that. So let's get into it. So this episode, we're going to be talking about the mental process of ascension and awakening. So mental thoughts, programming, which is such a critical part. I know that that's a part that a lot of people struggle with, as it's an ongoing, it's a constant ongoing, kind of check yourself process as we, come out of old, linear thought patterns, old programming, things that we were sort of indoctrinated upon us as we were children or growing up, or that runs through our lineage and all that different good stuff. So I want to hand it over to you guys. I don't know who wants to jump in first. Maybe we'll start with you, Kaija, seeing as you so beautifully brought this to our attention to record. So
yes, thank you, Alisha. So I just when you ask us what topic would be interesting, for me the mental was springing out instantly, because I'm very mental, I'm very analytic, I always was, and I've got the feeling I become more and more aware of that. It's not that it's changing really, but at the moment I have often this awareness that I'm not where I am, that I'm not in this present moment and feel what I feel, but elsewhere, that I think about the future, the past, events that triggered me. Instead of feeling them, instead of going in, I analyze them, and I realize how much I go away from myself, from what is really going on, and hinder healing in this kind of being here and not here, or whatever going on in my body. So, and as I told you, it feels sometimes like a struggle, like a fight in myself. It's my ego, I will name it my ego, or my mind is stepping in so massively, and I know it will protect me. It is programmed to protect me. And in the meantime, I know that it's totally the other side what is happening, because healing can't take place when I'm in my headspace, not where I am really. So just to talk about my process and my awareness, what I'm dealing with a lot at the moment.
Yeah, it's very prevalent, and I think it's really important to point out, I think you touched on two quite important things, is the ego does have its function, the mental space does have its function, for critical thinking and self-preservation or protection mechanism, but it's about bringing awareness to it really, and not allowing it to override or rule our lives. And I love when you sort of brought in that whole coming from the heart space or the head space, and it's about being in cohesion with both. I So funny, because I had this, I love this actually, and this is a great thing to bring in, but I always have this, I like to put things in structures and boxes to sort of compartmentalize, to have a process or a formula that runs, and then something comes in and it throws it completely out of order. And one of them was that, you know, the ascension process starts from the mental, you know, like I know, I look back over my life and I think, yeah, I really struggle with my, you know, mental function, my thought processes. And, you know, that's the one that sort of gets bursts wide open and allows higher consciousness to come in. And then it's followed by the, you know, emotional process and then the physical process, and trying to put it in that structure or in that way. And we had the last episode that we talked about, or going to back, where Jen and Katie were talking about how their ascension catalyst was a real physical, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Jolt. And then that then started. So it's not necessarily going to look the same for everyone, but I think when the ascension process hits, or the awakening process, you know, when it's more subtle, I think a lot of it starts in the awareness of the limiting belief systems, the mental process. And that, you know, as we start to unravel those, it allows for us to hold a greater space to bring in higher levels of awareness, and using higher consciousness rather than the lower mind. I like to break it into those two components. But I want to hear input from the rest of you. What comes to mind when it's, you know, oh, the smiles. There's so much to cover, isn't there?
Well, I think my onslaught was so physical because my mental was so chaotic. How could it possibly? I probably chose physical because I had so much programming going on. But something that I will say about my ascension is that the barrage of thoughts to sabotage my gifts that come through, like, wow, the negativity, the intensity, the sabotaging, the questioning, the doubting. I can't believe how much energy is behind those, and how something so good my brain was ready to just like eradicate, like, no, this isn't happening. And that was very challenging for me, because on the one hand, I'd be elated and be excited to be seeing all these things and exploring it, also having the aspect of like my mental health, like where I was, but then having this constant debate with all this negativity. I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Why can't I accept and embrace what's happening to me? So there was huge resistance from my hardwired programming. Like, this isn't normal. This isn't your rigid routine. It didn't like that change at all.
Thank you, Jen. You just touched on something, and I was like, oh yes. I don't know what sparked it. You didn't mention it, but I do want to bring in, and we don't have to talk about it right now, but the thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the unseen influences that can influence our thought processes that aren't ours. So if I forget, please allow that to come back into discussion, and because there's some really easy techniques that we can do to help minimize or clear that. So I think that's I need a pen and paper. There's so much that's going to come through, but I want to throw it over to you, Anna or Joe. What sort of comes to mind when
I'll go, Joe. Okay. Well, for me, actually, I'll go with Kaija. You know, before the whole ascension process, ego. It was all ego. I was in survival mode. All ducks had to be in a row. Everything had to be controlled. Everything had to be analyzed. But I guess a lot has changed. I mean, I've just spent the whole weekend offline, crying, no mobile phones, no nothing, and really feeling. And that was great because it was so undisturbed. A lot of feelings came up, and even today I was just saying, what is wrong with me? Like, my heart is so sensitive. I think I just opened up something, because now I'm just feeling all the time. Of course, the mind still wants to try and analyze it, like, where's it coming from? Is it mine, and all that stuff? And can I meditate? Can I go for a walk? You know, but I guess now the difference is I look more for positive things to have an outlet with those emotions rather than trying to control it. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I guess that leads into, because the thought process then triggers the emotion, and it's a flow-on effect, isn't it? You know, so it's about checking the mental process, and then and how we can not monitor, but what's the word I'm looking for? Track, yeah, or guide that, you know, guide the emotional process as well, because when the combination of, you know, in the higher aspect of the mental awareness and the emotional process, that beautiful alchemical process, when the fusion comes in, that's a creative force of materialization and manifestation when it's in its highest form. But also, you know, it can come through in other ways too. So yeah, I like the we can sort of go down that track. That I'm starting to fire up now, but I'll go to you, Jo, because I know that you've got a lot. This is an area that you specialize in, and I know that you've got a lot to contribute around this topic.
Yeah, I mean, just listening to everybody, I think the thing is, we kind of all assume that, you know, we all have these brains and they all do the same thing and this is how they function. And I'll never forget a neurologist once, when it came to my daughter. She had to have an MRI. She had lots of neurological medical problems, and her brain looked beautiful and perfect. And, you know, this neurologist said to me, the thing is, you can get a perfect looking brain and it's not functioning, and we don't know why. Or you can get a brain that's literally doesn't look like it could work. And he said, if you think of it like a computer, you can get a new one and it doesn't work, or you can get someone and it's made up of all of these bits and bobs and it doesn't look like it should be able to do anything and it works fine. And I always find the cognitive function is very personal. You know, it depends on what we've come in with. So when Jen, you were talking about how your brain would almost kind of sabotage your gifts coming through, this could be a protective function from previous lifetimes when you suffered for your gifts, and actually those resonance and things that are kind of being held within your system are going, oh, are we sure we want to do this? This didn't, you know, it didn't go so very well for us last time. And Kaija, you know, when you're saying about the emotional process isn't coming because the brain's thinking all of these different things, there's so many protective layers whereby the brain genuinely feels that it's protecting us from hurt. If something's going to hurt us, then we're just going to completely bypass this. We're going to find 1,000 reasons why we don't need to go down that path, because that path's painful. And I think when we can kind of become friends with our brains and friends with the fact it's trying to protect us, it makes it easier to push it out of the way a little bit. But as we said before we hit record, you know, the thought processes, the programming and the conditioning that we're given, if we've not programmed our brains, it's been programmed for us. And to try and recognize or track or guide those thoughts can feel exhausting. It really, really can, but it also can be done. And sometimes, again, I don't know about anybody else, if I've got a massive task ahead, I will procrastinate because it's just like, oh, it's just too big. I just can't do this. And again, that's my brain telling me, no, it's too big. I don't want to do it. So I think it's just a really complex, but it's such an important topic. Such an important topic.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. Thank you. One experience of mine comes to mind. This goes way back. I think in the first half of my life, I was a constant overthinker, and I think when I look at my family structure, I can kind of see where I took on certain personality traits from both parents, and then obviously that goes back down that lineage. But and I think everyone can relate to it, that trying to plan your day and your week and how things will go, and you play things over and over in your mind about, I don't want to hurt that person. I want to upset that person. I don't want to be wrong. You know, there's so many factors that come in, and the mind just tick, 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 tick constantly. And then when you get to the actual event or work or wherever it is that you're going, things generally work out very differently than all the 100 billion scenarios that you run through your mind. And, you know, you would think that if we constantly do that, that we would remind ourselves that that's so much wasted energy. It's so unnecessary. And I know that during my you know, development years in terms of like spiritual awakening and developing psychic abilities and things like that, I had so many different influences and so many different teachers and modalities and things to do. And it was like, you know, these concepts like you have to meditate 3 hours a day and you have to exercise 3 hours a day and then you have to read spiritual, you know, texts for 3 hours a day. You know, that's perfect if you're sitting in a monastery. You know, that's perfect for you know, Eastern Buddhism practice. You know, that's what they, you know, that is part of their practice there. And I was trying to incorporate that into my world where I worked in a corporate job. You know, sometimes working 60 hours a week and 2 hours transit each day on top of that. And I was trying to cram all of that in and be a normal functioning human, you know, and I put so much pressure on myself. And there was just this constant like pressure that I put on myself mentally that would make me just self-combust. I would just break down in a heap because it was just overload and it was too much. And then one day, just literally, it was like something happened and I woke up and I was happy and I was think something was different, and I couldn't put my finger on it, and I struggled for weeks and weeks, maybe even months or years, I don't even know. And I was like, what changed? What happened? What changed? You know what it was? I stopped beating myself up and putting pressure on myself, and I went to, you know what, I'm just going to go in a flow of what feels right and what feels good and what I want to do rather than what I think I should be doing. And that's the point that I want to come back to is, you know, we create these I don't even know what to call it. I'm not good with my mental into word function at the moment. But, you know, we create these concepts of what we think we should be doing and what is best for us rather than going with, you know, how we feel in the moment. So can you guys think of any sort of pivotal moments in your life where you realized something about yourself, or you realized, oh, I'm doing that and I'm not doing that, and oh, that works so much better?
Well, I went down the whole route of cognitive behavioral therapy and neuro-linguistic programming. I saw lots of therapists and like psychiatrists, and so they're giving you all these tools and tips and tricks to like, you know, work this out, like let's unpack this, let's sort this out, and that has its place, definitely has its place. But I remember walking out of like the counselling one day and just sitting there going, I actually just don't know what I even think. I feel like every thought that I have, like Joe said before, it's something I've been told, it's an adaptation of my parents, it's like teachers. So I was like, I don't even know what I think about all these topics. And I remember sitting there crying and crying and crying for hours, just going, who am I? Like, what do I think? And it was very weird and scary. It's like this massive void space of just floating in there going, all right, let's extract, like, and I do that in my light language all the time. Like, it's like, let's like pull that all out. What is my conscious, like, what is my ego? And I didn't know. And I think a lot of people possibly don't know until they start to really sit in that, the stillness or the space between what I call between the ego and the calmer moments.
Mm-hmm. I can totally relate to that. I can remember a point in my life where I was in a major dark night and my mum just looked at me and she said, I have to laugh as I say it because it was so hurtful what she said to me. However, it really, really hit home. And she said to me, the thing is, I think maybe you just need to find what makes you happy and do a little bit of that. And I literally gave her the biggest death stare, like, wow, I can't believe I didn't think of that. But then I actually did sit and think about that, and I thought, I don't know what makes me happy. I've been living my life for everybody else for such a long time. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I enjoy. In fact, when was I last happy? Like truly, genuinely happy within me, within what I was doing, rather than just, oh, look, somebody wants to do this and we're all really happy, yay. And it was this real, as you said, Jen, this massive kind of collapsing of me. And I always now kind of refer to that point in my time whereby I felt very beautifully broken, because in the essence of picking up the pieces, I decided which ones I wanted to keep and which ones I wanted to throw away. And that was a really nourishing and cathartic space for me to be in. But it had everything for me personally, just had to break and shatter.
That's really beautiful, Jo. And I can relate to that 3 years ago when I went through my own, I guess, big life-changing moment. And I did exactly that, meditated a lot, worked out, because, you know, you're a mother, you're doing things for your kids, what makes your family and friends happy, and making sure everyone thinks that you're doing well and putting on this face. But yeah, 3 years ago, I did do the same thing, and we kind of just said, well, stuff it. Really picked the ones that I wanted to keep for myself, and the ones that I didn't, I discarded. And it was quite empowering, actually. And it was also amazing in a sense that, wow, I really didn't know who I was. And yeah, I can totally relate to what you're saying. Yeah.
It's interesting. I just already, when you spoke, Jen, I had this moment this year during the lockdown when I had time, I had enough money, I had no problems, I had a safe space. And coming out of a complicated situation as my relationship ended, but it was just space for me. I didn't have to work, I didn't have to do anything nothing to do. And realizing then that I have no clue what I want to do, what I really want to do. I feel safe when I take care of others, when I help others. It's always easy, but just what do I want to do in this moment? And it was like, Jo, like you said, it was really terrific in a way, and liberating in another way, to sit there and say, oh, I have no contact with this part of me. Say, yes, there, this is on, this is coming. And to sit with that, firstly.
Did you ladies all find that you kind of, because within the cognitive function, I feel like a lot of the time we forget to be childlike, we forget to have fun, we forget all of those elements because we're so busy adulting and having responsibility and doing the things we feel we should do. And for me, in that process, I'll never forget, one of the big things was food. Because, well, what do I want to eat? If I've not got to feed everybody else, what do I want to eat? And I became a forager, and I found that I ate a lot of cheese on toast, and I bought a pot noodle. Come on. But it was just this expression of, tonight I am going to only eat chocolate. And within that, it was kind of this acceptance of this non-burdened version of myself that I was allowing to come through at the same time.
I see there's a lot of agreement there. I really want to go back to, thank you for your input. I want to go back to what Jen said earlier about not knowing what her thoughts were, and what, you know, that I want to dive deeper in that, because that's really an interesting point that I think maybe a lot of people are coming up against or have experienced, as to how, oh, my phone wants to input in that. You know, how do we recognize our own thoughts and what our beliefs are, and, you know, what has been programmed and what is true to us? I mean, that's a really interesting topic to explore right now.
What just reminds me that Alisha always will say to me, is it your thought or is it someone else's? And to this day, I still don't know. Like, I just, if I'm being really honest, like, as on my path as I am, sometimes I'm just like, I've got no idea. And I think that's that shows you just how entangled the patterning and the programming is in our brains. But mine was so dark and persistent, and I felt like my brain was kind of being invaded.
Yes.
So I was like I'm a very creative person. I was like, it wasn't until much later on reflection that I was like, wow, I feel like not hosted maybe, but I feel like there are a lot of lower vibe energies because I was already down on this like level. They're just like, yo, let's go in there. And I guess you're probably better equipped to discuss like the mechanics of that. But it's a very interesting contrast if you're a very light person, but you're vibrating at a very dark, lower place. That can be very all-consuming, and the little cracks of light took a long time to come out. So I guess for me, and I suppose there's like that medical aspect too, like, am I schizophrenic? Am I getting voices telling me what to do? Especially if you're like clairaudient, or you get it. There's such a fine, for me, I find there's such a fine medical line, but that was my experience of it. And it wasn't until I got into nature and I just had maybe sometimes just like 2 minutes of peace and quiet where I was like, oh, I'm actually quite calm and still and centered. Whereas before it's just this constant, it felt a bit demonic, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you bring that up, because one thing that's sort of coming into my mind is things that I've seen during sessions where I've done things like entity removal or move static energy off people, and I can see it in the energy form, and I know that I'm not the only one on this call who's had these experiences working with different clients where you can literally remove I guess the term is like intrusive thoughts, and if you are someone who doesn't necessarily think suicidal thoughts and all of a sudden you're being bombarded with it, I mean, there is a fine line. Sometimes that is people's process, but that's just one extreme example. And I know where I've gone through times in my life where I've been in a really dark space and having these very intrusive thoughts, very, very dark thoughts, and then, go and do some energy clearing and realize that there was, energy forms that were feeding off my energy, for lack of a better word, really, but it was impeding in my thought process. And I can see, I've looked at schizophrenia because in my previous life that was with Ana, in this lifetime, when we used to work together, we did, I don't know if you did, Ana, but mental health training. Yeah. And a first aid mental health training. And I found that really fascinating because I went in there with very spiritual eyes. And when they were talking about all these different disorders, especially schizophrenia, I find so fascinating. And I seeing it from the spiritual perspective of entity attachment or, things like that. I just wonder how easy the solution could be. I'm not saying in all cases, but potentially could be in people who deal with ongoing, thought processes that aren't theirs. When you start to get into the unseen and the other realms, it's a very, very real thing that people go through as part of their, leveling up and awakening ascension. I think pretty much everyone goes through that. And I guess then there's that other thing that comes into my mind is having I don't even know what to call this. We need a terminology for it. But I've seen it, and I'm sure everyone else has seen it. When you're having a conversation with someone and they start relaying things that that's not their thought process, and you clearly know that they've picked that up from someone else in their life, and you just kind of you're having this conversation. It's like, I don't actually feel like I'm having this conversation with this person because it's like someone else's words are coming through them. So just to put that in the mix, I guess. I don't know if you guys have anything that you want to add on to that.
The thing, when you were talking, Jen, about, what thoughts are mine, what thoughts are somebody else's, I think the other thing that I'd like to mention at the moment is it's always commonly referred to as shadow work. But when you are awakening and then ascending, you are going through an ascension. that all parts of yourself are brought for review to see. And they're, you know, I think the whole, oh, I'm all love and light. I'm just going to say personally and put my hand up, I'm not all love and light. You know, I am a multifaceted, multidimensional person that can wake up some days and I literally don't even look at me. There's no reason. I'm not mean, I'm not cruel, I don't project, I don't make things other people's responsibility. But sometimes my demeanour is like, today I'm going to be pissy, and that's okay. And I've accepted that through what we'd call shadow work. But I think a lot of the time as well, when we're so heavily conditioned to be good, be perfect, be polite, be this, be love, be all of these different things, it's kind of like the grumpy or the other parts of ourselves, when we're going through that process of clearing and shifting and removing a lot of that gunk, have to come up for acceptance as well. And sometimes our own thought processes can feel quite unacceptable to us in the beginning. It can be quite challenging to kind of accept that we may hold a certain part of ourselves, and that may well be from now, it may well be from our past in this life, it may be something that somebody else has told us, it could be a past life that we're holding on to this side, and yeah, that can sometimes be confrontational as well. It's and that's where this is such a huge topic, because there's so many different elements of things that come in within our thought processes. And I always felt the biggest challenge was stepping away from what I should be and truly accepting and embracing what I am at any variant point, and knowing that that could look quite bipolar in the space of 24 hours, but that was also okay.
Imagine if someone had just told me, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe that's not your own thought. Like, that would have changed my life. Like, it just completely would have challenged my whole paradigm of just my brain. Like, and that's why I think these conversations are so important, because that wasn't even a possibility that, what do you mean these could be infiltrated thoughts? So I think that in itself is such a huge revelation, to be confronted with that.
I always think, why do I think this? And if I don't know why I think it, then someone else has told me to.
I think, yes, interesting. When I listened to you, Jen, I never thought about this until today. And what was coming up for me, I've chosen highly analytical and highly anxious parents. So, and when you observe children until a certain age, 3-4 years, they don't vary, they don't think, they don't analyze, they are in the moment. They feel. So what's coming up when I listen to you and thought in my mind about what was my process, that for sure this kind of worrying, being anxious, thinking too much, overanalyzing came from my parents. I think I adapted it. I adapted it in Kaija version, but it is not original for me. It is not what my nature is. Maybe I brought it from past lives always to protect, but for sure to worry and to have thoughts we frighten ourselves with. It's not our natural state. This is coming up now in this moment when I listen and have a look how it is for me. But it feels as if it is mine, because it's so adapted. I have so explored and developed this kind of thinking for myself with my thoughts, that it feels like it is mine. And thank you, Jen, for bringing this up. I never have thought about it, felt it.
I love the diversity of all our different experiences and how we come together and share. And I think the key element in terms of the mental process that I always go back to is observation is key. And if you can observe what is going on and break it down from that third person or observer perspective and not be emotionally tied up into it or invested in it in any way, that's where you can start to shine light on breaking it down, and maybe using some of the concepts that we're just discussing is because I think we're such a fusion of all the different elements of what you were just saying there, Kaija. Our parents, you've brought it up a few times, Joe, past life, patterning. Is this mine? Is this not mine? And I know my upbringing is probably quite unique in the sense that it was always about spirit and about the non-physical and the unseen. And one thing that keeps playing into my mind, I guess I became very good at understanding and discerning what was mine, what wasn't mine, because I was developing my own psychic gifts and abilities from a very young age. And I'm, taking on different teachers' advice and teachings in terms of how you attune clairaudiently. And I remember a very pivotal moment in because I constantly had this thought, all these thoughts, right? And especially at nighttime, it would increase. And I remember my head hitting the pillow one night, and I was listening to all these thoughts going on, but they were in a different language. And that was when I was like, oh. So I constantly just had spirit talking at me, and if you're not aware of that, and you think that you're just going bonkers because you've just got non-stop thoughts and chattering going on in your head, but I was just tuning into, and if you are a shining light and you start to tap into I think every single person has that ability to tap into clairaudience and to hear. That is one of our many gifts.
That's something right. That's as you've said that, I'm thinking thank you so much, because a couple of times I thought and then it's gone again. The whole societal and cultural thing is huge. So even if we work beyond what we're being taught as children, what we're learning from our family dynamics, what kind of things we're told we should, would, could, etc., the societal and cultural part is huge. And if we think back to, in the nicest possible way, I will often say, if I were living the life I'm living now, 20, 30 years ago, I would probably be in an institution, because I'm so openly out there with my experiences. And, that requires a certain level of bravery. And it also requires overcoming the mind telling you, no, because only crazy people think this, or actually, so-and-so down the road heard voices and they ended up being put on medication. It plays such a huge part in people's acceptance of what they hear, what they see, what their awareness is, etc. And considering that when you're on this journey, most of us go through all of this, I feel it's such an important part to raise, to say, you're okay. It's okay,
Yeah, and sorry, that just made me think too that when I finally did start having my own thought forms, people are so quick to tell you, oh, that's not what you think. Like, wow. So it take me so long to get to that point, and then people are so quick to be like, oh, that's not you. That's not what you think. I'm like, why do I have this? Like, it's like, these are my, and I had to be very. It was a big lesson for me to stand up for myself and be like, actually, no, this is what I think. I had felt like a little bit of Play-Doh, like manipulated and controlled and like put into all these like fun shapes. And I was like, no, I'm breaking out of that mold and I'm going to play over here with my own Play-Doh. It's a terrible analogy, but
yeah. Just on the back of that, Jen, I know what you mean. The discussions I've had with my family just with the COVID situation in Melbourne at the moment, sharing my thoughts and opinion, it's like I'm not the Ana that they know. So, it causes a bit of friction. It's difficult when it's your family because, you love them. But at the same time, having your own thought and opinion, which is different to what you used to be because, as you're shedding old programming and stuff, it is a little bit difficult, isn't it? Like when you want to stand your ground and you can't think, this is who I am, this is what I believe in. It is a little bit difficult sometimes.
Yeah, and then slide back into the old programming, because that's so easy to do too, right? Because that's been with you for 30 odd years and you've only been thinking this for 5. So,
and it makes for an easier life, you know. If you don't say these things, everybody else is happy. And for me personally, I have always struggled so much with going blah, 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 and being the ball in the china shop, to kind of just being able to sit and just give a little, because I don't think I have a happy medium, unfortunately. But hey, I've accepted this.
You just grab it by the balls, don't you, Jo?
Right. Just smash all the china up and be like, oops.
and then look at all the damage.
So I am really, really good now. I can discern when not to say anything. But the problem is that what I found, and I think it comes from being quiet for so long, for not having a voice for so long, is that I can sit and I can sit and I can sit and I can sit. But the problem is I can almost feel all things come building and building and building, and then I become incredibly impassioned. And yeah, it's something I'm still working with.
Now, I want to flip the narrative just a little bit, because knowing that we're all coming into this discussion today, the word that keeps coming into my mind is cognitive dissonance, which is, you know, it's thrown around the truth-seeking community quite a lot these days, especially with so much truth coming to light on various different topics. And I know that it's probably important to bring this up about, you know, cognitive dissonance in terms of when new information comes to you, you know, going through various stages of our own evolutionary path, that, you know, we have to adapt to new ways of thinking and concepts and things that are a little bit, you know, way out there. And truly what it comes down to is that, you know, if someone hasn't experienced it for themselves, there is going to be that rejection. You know, what's the stage? You know, first they reject you, they ridicule you, you know, then whatever. Can't remember. Someone jump in if you know what I'm talking about.
There's anger in there somewhere too. You know, you get angry if you challenge, I believe.
Yes.
But I think there's blame as well.
Yes.
I think.
Well, we should bring that up on a screen.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
But when you're coming to people with information that may be shocking or that disagrees with what they have been led to believe, and we all know through the awakening process that everything that we have been taught and led to believe to be true and factual, as we go through our awakening, literally gets flipped on its head, and we realize that it's the opposite that's true, not what we've been led to believe. And so, you know, I know that so many people will relate to this, is that, you know, you come to people and you share information and you blow their mind a little bit, but they have that like glaze over. The eyes glaze over and you think, oh, yeah, I've just
too far. Retreat.
It's like clinging to what they know in their old program. Like, no, this is what I know. I can't know anything else. This is it. I'm a grown woman. This is my. So, sure.
I personally will, if some, you know, I'm wearing a black top. If somebody wishes to come to me and say, "Oh, I like your green top," I'm not going to stand there and say to them, "You do realise it's black, right?" Because I think everything, I'm kind of very accepting at the moment that everything is perception, and your perception is only what your brain and your feeling will agree upon at any given time, and that is always open to change. And I think with so much coming out at the moment, people can only bite off as much as they can chew at any given point, and I don't want to choke anybody, but it is that kind of thing of your own integrity of, you know, well, this is what I feel, but hey, I can see that you've glazed over and that was too big a bite for you, so I'll just back away now.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's also about planting the seeds.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah. You can call me Farmer Anna.
She likes to plant red pill seeds. everywhere.
I do like plants. Yeah. Anyway.
I guess I just want to bring up the fact that generally speaking, you know, people aren't going to believe something until they go through an experience themselves. You know, very, very few people can come to new way out concepts with a really open mind, because we live and have been brought up in a society that doesn't nurture that or free thinking, you know. And that's a whole other topic. But I think that, you know, going back to what Ana said, I think it's really good to plant seeds if we feel guided and prompted to, because that's how evolution takes place. You know, we've got to plant the seeds before the harvest. Oh, I love that. That's a law of one term about ascension, the harvest. So I could just play on words here, but I won't. So I guess let's go into, you know, some of the ways, things that you have found helpful, either for yourself in your own process or guiding and supporting other people through being a practitioner, to help people come to new ideas, new concepts, you know, reprogramming, unprogramming, you know, moving, shift, that, you know, what Kaija and I love to talk about, shifting focus from, you know, from one, you know, aspect to another, and being really conscious of, oh, my mind is going down this rabbit hole that really doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever, and catching it and being able to shift the focus to something that is much more conducive. Yeah, tips and tricks that have been helpful, either for yourself or what you may guide other people through in terms of the all-encompassing mental process.
Well, I think what's coming up first is what is helpful in that moment to step out of the mind when it's too active. So to first of all come back in the body or in the feeling, or this breathing, feeling your body, making something physical, to open up, to come to another point of view. And then for sure what I can do as a practitioner in a session, or also in a conversation, that I can speak for myself and what I see else. That I can say, okay, this is this human experience, and I see your pain, and I see you don't want this breakup or whatever happened, and then have a look on the higher perspective, what can open up, and just I always speak very personal and say, this is my perspective, this is what I see, can you resonate with it? I would never say, I see that it is like this, because I think then what's happening really quickly is, okay, this is your point of view. Okay, I've got another one. I've got this breakup here. This is opening, not something. And then this is happening with what you said, Alisha. Sometimes there's this glaze, and Ana, like you said, to plant a seed or to help shift the focus. And it's always up to the other person if he or she wants it. There's nothing else, and leave it then like this.
I love what you've said there, Kaija, because that whole essence of kind of, okay, this is my perception, or this is what I'm getting from this, but allowing somebody to take resonance or own it for themselves, I think is so important when people are working with people in relation to the cognitive, because actively, if we're telling somebody this is what you're thinking or this is what you're experiencing, we're actually reprogramming them, and we're not allowing them to reprogram themselves. And that feels such an important part that I feel personally when I work with people, is for them to understand their process from where they're at in relation to recognizing things, but then actually replacing, you know, oh, I've always thought this way around this, and I think this comes from here, so the way I'd like to potentially feel about it is this, you know, so and that then belongs to them, rather than somebody else telling them that's what they should do, I guess.
Well, Joe is who helped me. So get yourself a practitioner. It might not necessarily be someone, spiritual awaken. It can, like I said, the counselor route has its place, but Joe, that is your area of expertise. And I think you said to me when I very first started, because I had my thoughts and the addition of light language, which is like, whoa, non-stop thoughts. I think you said to me, pay attention to my thoughts. And I was so oblivious to what I was telling myself every single day. Like, what do we have? Like average of 65,000 or something ridiculous amount of thoughts. Most of mine were just absolute garbage. So get someone who can work with you, who can, it has to be the right fit, but I will give you a massive shout out, Joe. This is your expertise. You have helped me immensely. And because you come from it, from that lovely blend of both, like the psychiatry aspect and then the spiritual aspect. So it's perfect for people like us who are sort of stepping into their abilities. So that is honestly, and looking at trees has been like, because they're so calm and still, and I'm like, look at the tree, it doesn't need anything more than what it is. It has everything it needs within itself. It's not relying on this other tree. It's not getting its information from anything else. It just is in its entirety who it is. So they're my two things.
Awesome. I love that advice. Be like a tree.
That's why I'm trying to
Around.
Anything else that
Please, Anna.
Oh, you go, Kaija.
No, please go. I will after.
Share what I would do, or what I have been doing. A couple of things. If I'm really hectic, and I can tell, I get really quite snappy at people, and it's like, whoa. Breathing into my feet actually really grounds me. If I'm feeling emotional, it's breathing into my heart space. Those are the two things that I do. And then, of course, you've got the things like meditating to help you center or actually process things without, getting too heavy in your head, just going into the meditation. So those are things that I do.
Beautiful. A couple of things come to mind. Wow, I didn't realize how big a topic this is and how it could just expand. But some of the things that come to mind, I often talk to clients about, being conscious of moving from their head into their heart space, and that cohesion, because quite often the heart is in the internal knowing, the intuition, and that resonant, and the head can just be running a whole heap of programs, and it's like finding that stillness and bringing the energy into the heart space. But I also, I 100% agree with Jen. This is definitely Joe's area of expertise, and what she works with clients. But I just want to reiterate that every single one on this call is a practitioner, and we went through a technique that has come to me, working with the energetical component, which is the consciousness rewiring. So every beautiful person that you see on this scene is equipped to do that practice and that energy work. And sometimes when we work with the energy of it, it can help the mental process work, reprogram, unwire, whatever you want to call it, that much easier. So sometimes it's really good to come in from all angles. But some of the really basic, simple ones is, document, if you are having just haywire thoughts, write it down and then look at it, and then maybe this is just coming to my mind now, get a highlighter and, look at what might be coming from parents, and another color might be, what comes from, society, and that might be, a good way for people to start to come into, what is their thought process and what isn't. But I know one of my beautiful teachers in the beginning, one of the practices that she used to get us to do was to have one entire day where you're conscious of your thoughts the entire day. No, yeah. Not judging, just observing. And then
so intense.
But yeah, I highly recommend anyone to try that process, and then from that you can extend it out. So then, because that's then coming into looking at reprogramming it. So visualizing almost like you've got the devil and an angel on one shoulder, and being able to recorrect thoughts and thought patterns when you know that you're having a negative dialogue, especially about yourself. I mean, we are our own biggest critics, 100%. And so it's like that shared story that I mentioned earlier about, you know, I stopped beating myself up, you know. Life became so much more beautiful when I stopped running so much hard, heavy, you know, what I should be, do, think, act, how I should be, you know.
I've always said, and this sounds stupid, this one sentence I'm going to say, because I always say, I think the word should be eradicated, and I'm saying it should be. But when we put should in front of anything in relation to ourselves, we're basically diminishing ourselves. And that's just one simple tip. If at any point we're thinking something in relation to even I should be doing this, means we're diminishing what we're choosing to do instead. That one word can change something from being potentially okay to not being okay. And it's silly little things like that can make a huge difference.
Yeah. Oh God, it's just come into my head. In that, I'm actually going to place in the description, I hope I remember to do that, one of my teachers has just put an ebook together, and it's 7 living essentials, which covers, you know, mental, emotional, physical, and a lot of those techniques are in there, and she's offering it for free during this time, because, you know, so many people need those basic principles just to get that balance and equilibrium. And in that material, I'm flashing back to a lot of that material, and one of the exercises was to replace the word should with could, and then you have to write, you know, the word choose, and keep it, you know, in your room or in your space, and reprogramming. Oh, hello, Woody Tat. And reprogramming that, you know, I should be doing this. It's like, no, I could be. It's a choice. I can choose to do this, or I can choose to do that. It's so much more empowering. So thank you for bringing that up, Jo.
I have something coming up, what I learned by a beautiful practitioner, soul brother, to recognize your thought and then say to yourself, monsters ignore after that. Monsters ignore, like the thought, you're frightening, this frightening thought is a monster, and ignore it.
Oh, ignore it.
And then when I told him I can say this all day long, and he said, no, not to prevent the thought, just become aware of the thought and then say, monsters ignore. This is beautiful functioning as well.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's it. Yeah, that's a little great, like to throw it in, to bring that awareness. And once again, it's raising that awareness. Oh, wow. Well, you know, thank you, lady. I think we're coming up to the end of the hour, but I just want to thank you all so much for being such great participants in this conversation. And of course, if you feel guided, you wanted to connect with any of these beautiful ladies or myself, all the details will be in the description box below. Any final thoughts or words before we wrap up, ladies?
Book with Jo.
Oh, shush. Actually, I wanted to say thank you so much to Kaija for even bringing this topic up, because it is such a huge topic. And I personally feel that anybody watching this would struggle to not feel that they've had to encounter some kind of cognitive blockages or stuff going on. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Kaija. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And until the next episode, once again, love to hear your comments and thoughts and suggestions for upcoming episodes. But until then, much love, and we will see you all soon. Bye.